The deal is this. Tell you, when I was a kid, that read Dropper Anton Wilson, all this real. Tell you, when I was a kid, that read Dropper Anton Wilson, all this real. Dude, I'm pissed. Dude, I'm pissed. Come on. What?
And I'm Gary Butterfield.
And this is Days of Future Cast, the podcast where Gary and I are covering not really. We're covering issues of X-Men comic books because we're not crazy people. We're going to kick off our for real coverage of the new X-Men series by Grant Morrison. We're starting with new X-Men issue 114. This is the first issue of the first arc. E is for Extinction. So our last episode, we kind of set up the general series and like who the writer is and the artist is, the premise of the series a little bit. If you want to hear a little bit more of the generalities, go back to that issue, that episode. Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. Forgot how to talk in between 2 fucking minutes.
Yeah, well, full disclosure, Jerry went and grabbed a charger for his iPad, so that'd wear anybody out.
Yeah, dude, I'm fucking out of breath. All of these weeks and weeks at the gym have done nothing.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with E is for Extinction, and this is going to be the introduction, and we're kind of just going to go through this page by page, panel by panel, and talk about what happens. Yeah,
and then kind of wrap it up. I love this opening panel for just kind of the beginning of the series. I mentioned a little bit last episode, but it's so dense with information, right?
Yes.
So we're starting out with Wolverine and Cyclops. They're fighting a Sentinel. They're in Sydney. You can look at the background. You can see the Sydney Opera House. We have the Sentinel has grabbed a mutant with a fucked up face that is hard to see. Cyclops is blasting him in the head calmly, super stiff posture, while Wolverine is just going ham on his spine. And just, again, just the dialogue. Like, Wolverine, you can probably stop doing that now.
I love this because like Cyclops seems like he's bored, and that's like bored Scott Summers that's in the middle of this kind of thing, and we're going to see a little bit more of that in this issue of his like lunatic calm under pressure, as Wolverine calls it, is just so fascinating to me. Of just he has done it all, he's been through it all, and he's just like, okay, yeah, whatever, let's crash a plane to fucking Ecuador, let's do it.
Yep. I love it. And then we smash cut 30,000 years earlier. And we've got a scene where a character we're going to later find out is Cassandra Nova, who is dressed in a pith helmet, like dressed up for a fun little safari.
Sure.
Has taken this chubby guy back to watch the Neanderthals kill the Cro-Magnons.
Yes.
Here.
And she's basically going through the speech of like, this is how it really happened. Like, I know the history books wanted to erase this, but like there was a species that was made to be extinct by the succeeding species. And like, that's probably going to start happening again unless we exterminate a bunch of mutants. So like out of the gate, it sets like this huge tone of like, here's a villain whose core aim is to kill all the mutants ever. And like, that's just like big fucking stakes for page 2.
Yeah,
page 2 and 3, I guess it's a split page.
Like at first it's a little bit subtle to that, but we know something is up because she's talking to Mr. Trask. So that name, that's an X-Men mythology name, obviously Bolivar Trask, the creator of the Sentinels. So they're gonna pay off later, and the art here is extremely good. This is some good Quitely stuff with these these cavemen essentially, and it's just brutal. It is nauseating. As you mentioned last time, somebody pukes basically in the first couple pages. He is sickened by this. We get our title page after this. We're introduced to our cast. We talked about that last episode. Everyone looking extremely cool.
Yes.
Scott Summers, Jean Grey, Emma Frost, Hank McCoy, and Logan Wolverine.
And we go into the school, and it's a typical setup with, Xavier's about to get into Cerebro, except it's not actually Cerebro, it's Cerebra, because it's got a headband, right? Like that's the it's got a turtleneck and chain, right? Like that's its Cerebra.
It's got a hair ribbon.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Miss Pac-Man.
Yeah, it's playing hacky sack in the quad.
Yeah.
This is actually all very funny considering like Danger, like the Danger Room literally becomes a villain of the X-Men like way later, not in this series, but like way in a different series. So yeah. Anyway,
it's one of like someday we'll do Astonishing X-Men for this, assuming that that this format change works.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that run too. I think that has some of the worst visual designs.
Oh, dude,
like Ord,
yeah,
and then Danger
so
both
bad.
look like such horse shit.
And like
it's just like really bad.
Not to get way off, but like the composition, like we talked about how great Quietly is at that, and like Astonishing has some of the best and also some of the worst for some reason.
Yeah.
Like it's real weird. Anyway,
and it's John Cassidy, who I love.
Like, fucking Planetary
and stuff.
Dude.
He's
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah. Super not great in here. This is the first appearance of Cat Beast. Like this, it's kind of portrayed as this happens off panel, the Cat Beastening. That is part of Grant Morrison's thing. And this is our first version of him as a cat, which I dig. I like Cat Beast more than I like regular Beast. Yes. And he is basically just talking about, creating this new version of Cerebra that is more powerful.
I like, we get some of that classic Grant Morrison, I'm going to invent some words for shit like mind phones and replace to headphones. Like I just... Like it's so dumb and it's so great. Like I love that shit. Like you get a lot of that in his run of Doom Patrol as well. It's just like the fake science comic stuff is so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they're basically testing out this new version of Cerebro. Jean Grey is here as well, and we kind of see their friendship, right? Like one of the things again that I really love about Grant Morrison's writing is these people have known each other forever. Like these are founding X-Men. Like of course they're buddies. Like they would have banter. They would have like a repartee. Like sometimes people write them like they declare their powers or they declare their motivations, but not like they're friends. Like these characters, like his version of these characters try to make each other laugh.
And also like casually use powers to help each other out. Like on the next page, Jean's like, "Hey, do you want a soda?" And he's like, "Yeah, diet." And like she uses her telekinesis to like bring over a couple of drinks and hand it off like you hand your buddy a beer, right? Like she just beered him, bro. And it's
beer and Beast.
Yeah, Cerebra, beer me Cerebra. Is that what we're
Cerebeer? Cerebro. And they're, again, them just kind of having this banter, like, they're all reacting to Beast, turning into, this character, turning into this cat form. You ask for a diet soda and she's like, diet, you weigh 600 pounds. He's like, well, yeah, but I don't want to get fat. It is just them kind of goofing on each other.
It's a good line. Like I can hear the Blob saying that at some point of like, you weigh 2 tons. It's like, yeah, but it's all fucking muscle, man. Leave me alone.
Yeah. Yeah. And really, really great. Like, there's all kinds of little details about what it would be like to change into this form. Like, there's a great part where he's, they're talking about the mystery of like why he turned into this form, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to write a paper on it when I relearn how to use a pen."
Yeah, I like that.
Like his body has changed entirely different. Like, that's just a relevant detail that makes it feel more real.
And we should also note, like, this to me at this point, like all of the outfits and stuff that they're wearing, like they're in X gear, but they're not in like their old uniforms or anything. Like they're all just wearing cool shit that happens to have a bunch of X's on it, which I like a lot.
Yeah. It's stuff you wouldn't be embarrassed to wear.
Yeah. Gautier would make it, as I said in the last episode.
Yeah, exactly. It's like something that you used to wear. I
haven't figured out our naming scheme for these yet, but maybe that's a winner.
So then we get another double page splash. And it's it's the new version of the Cerebro, like looking at all the mutants in the world.
Yes.
And again, in that relevant detail, like there's a part where Jean Grey says there's like condensation forming on the walls. Like it's actually having an effect on the real world.
Because Cerebra is so much more powerful than Cerebro. Like it's his power to the 10th magnitude. Like, Xavier to the 10th is what this is. And Cerebro has never been able to get him this far before. And like it's that typical kind of X-Men thing of look how many millions of mutants there are. And look, there's many more every day. And kind of off to the side of what panel and Beast calls it out. It's like, oh, there's a weird spike in Ecuador. Like we should go check out this thing in South America. But nobody else saw it but Beast.
Mm-hmm. But luckily, Scott and Wolverine are on their way back from Sydney, just doing X-Men shit, fighting Sentinels, so they'll have them look into it.
Yeah. And then we
so then we switch over to them.
Yep. And I like this because Scott is immediately like, hey, can you please stop smoking? Wolverine, like, this is you have a healing factor, but I only have one set of lungs. And he's like, yep, that's just my skin still smoking from this fentanyl. What burned me, my man? Like, it's not.
Yeah. It was, and this is kind of our first, like, little bit of Wolverine dialogue. And I this is going to be, you're going to get sick of hearing this, but, like, I love these interpretations of the characters, because he is really dedicated to having Wolverine have a sense of humor. Like, he's very wry during this, and just like the big bad Sentinel set me on fire. Remember, I'm dealing with the emotional and physical side effects in my own way. He's got this, like, very dry sense of humor, which I think is a fun take on Wolverine. Like, he's not just a dumb rage monster.
Yeah, there
are times where he goes red, but he's also, he can interface with people around him. Like, he fits into this world.
Also, just this like mutant that they went to save, like, this is a pretty classic X-Men story of them having to fly off somewhere, defeat a Sentinel and rescue a mutant and then take them back to the school. But, like, this dude, his mutant power is having 3 faces, and he'll later say, like, and they all look like a pig. Like, my mates call me Ugly John. My name is Steve, though. Like, it's fucking crazy. And I just love the fact that, like, in the background of these panels, there's just a 3-faced dude looking back and forth at these guys like, who the fuck are you people? Like, what is going on right now? What is my life?
Yeah. How do we handle that? Yeah. So eventually, Ugly John passes out. And then they get their X-Men emergency, that they want to, X-Men's or Professor X is going to talk to them in the Brainosphere.
Yes. But before we get to that, we're going to go back over to Cassandra Nova, who has been flying in a helicopter with Trask, and it's revealed that, like, this whole Neanderthal Homo sapien thing was a VR thing. They basically have a couple of, like, weird shaped oculuses on their head to show off this simulation. And Trask rips his off and, like, pukes in it because this whole thing is so gross. And she's explaining that, his family built all these Sentinels, but they are also, like, did some secret black site Sentinels too, because there's always there's always, like, it reminds me of the movie Contact, like, why build one when you can build 2 at twice the cost? Like, it's just
and I love her. She's talking about Sentinels, and she's like, they look wonderful. It's a classic design, but they've never been effective, and that is true, right? Like, it's one of the oldest things the X-Men have ever dealt with, and they've never, until Nimrod. Like, they're batting 0, right? So she's like, there's these black site Sentinels, that the government has been paying for. You don't know anything about it. We get a little bit more background. She has kidnapped him. He has a dental practice in Albuquerque. He is one of the Trask relatives. He's not, Bolivar or a direct relative. He's just got the DNA. He'll turn out important later. And they told him that he was going to go do a Black Ops root canal on the president. Which is very funny.
Like only a schlubby dentist from Albuquerque would believe that bullshit. I'd be like, nah,
your country needs you.
You're gonna have to, like, knock me out and then drag me somewhere. I know that's not what you want me for.
Yeah, exactly. And then they find out that there has actually been a master mold in the middle of this, like, rainforest. It's awesome. It's all overgrown. Like, the trees are reclaiming it. And it's been creating these new kinds of Sentinels, which we'll learn about soon.
I love the sense of scale to this too, because they come into, like, what looks like a crater, and there's just a Sentinel sitting there, like, and it's just enormous. But it also looks like desiccated, and like they've been pulling technology out of it to do other shit. Like, it's just a really cool look, and, like, sun setting in the background. Like, everything just looks so pretty and neat. Like, I want to explore this in a video game, right?
Great frame. Yeah. Like Shadow of the Colossus, the Sentinel.
Oh yes, 100%. Or, like,
amazing.
Or just start at the foot and like
or Shadow of Wolverine, Shadow of Nightcrawler, any of them.
Well, I was gonna say, like, it's fucking Dark Souls level, right? Start at the foot, and then you realize that you come out on a bridge. Like, oh, I bet that's been a person this whole time.
Yeah.
Anyway,
very good. Yeah. So again, this is another thing that I really like that we've talked about before on the show, how the Psyscape is lame. This comic does it right. Like, when they're having these mind meetings, like, there's just comfy couches.
Yeah, very cool
because it's fake. Like, why wouldn't it be? And they do, the background is all these crazy blueprints and equations and such.
It looks like the Math Lady GIF, right? Like, that's what this looks like.
Yeah.
Like 20 years earlier or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're kind of, being a little meta. Like, what do you think about the uniforms? Well, I'm glad I can just walk around like a normal fucking person anymore. It's like, yeah, I don't know why you dress us up like superheroes. We were never that. And Scott answering for Xavier on that is very Scott. Like, oh,
Yeah.
the professor thought they would trust the X-Men if we look like something that they understood, like the fucking Avengers. But obviously that's never that has never worked out for them. And I just like that Scott is, even though he's acting a little weird, like he's still Scott, like he still understands the vision and the mission at this point.
Yeah. Well, and he's very defensive of Xavier, and also that makes sense. It does it, they never really explained, like the X-Men were never traditionally superheroes. They always kind of put in a reactive role, but they dressed up like Avengers, and the idea that there's actually an explanation behind that is some pretty clever retconning.
Mm-hmm.
Xavier says something that will kind of pay off a little bit later. He says, I've been working on other ways to encourage people to trust mutants. This is going to come up a little bit later, just in kind of passing. But basically they tell them to stop by Ecuador.
Yep. And then the next page is basically all about Wolverine insinuating that something is going on between Cyclops and Jean. Like they're obviously married at this point, but they have not spoken to each other in the comic book. And I think Wolverine says something about like the atmosphere in there just being so thick or whatever. Like it's just something has changed between. There's a coolness between them, which I think is. As a guy that, was raised with Cyclops and Jean being for some reason the fucking ideal couple in comic books, like which is crazy if you think about it. Like it was, again, picking this up in like 2004 and reading this was like, what's going on with Scott and Jean? What's happening? What's going on?
Yeah. Yep. And again, just Wolverine's sense of humor. I want you to know, you have a shoulder to cry on if you need it, which, is great. Their relationship is really good. I love this. Cyclops is like, we have work to do in Ecuador. And he goes, which is more than most people have in Ecuador.
Thank you, Grant Morrison. Thank you, woke Grant Morrison.
Yeah, exactly. So switching back over to the mansion. And we've got Beast also has an upgrade. Everyone got new tech.
Mm-hmm.
So his new thing is being able to do these kind of like autopsies or medical things through this big VR kind of augmented reality thing.
Yeah.
And he's walking around looking at these blood cells.
Actual
magnified 1,000 times.
Yeah, super cool looking. Like actually being able to walk through that and see it like at a cellular level is really cool to me.
The big thing here, they're talking about like, hey, Xavier seems like he's really kind of hypercharged. It's like, well, we almost lost it. That's what happened. Like whenever you almost lose something, you come back more dedicated.
Yeah.
All these people died. We had to give them meaning.
And Jean also has a weird moment here. Like this is kind of a classic weird moment. Jean, where in the middle of a sentence, she like starts talking weird and it's like, oh no, that was nothing. Don't worry about me. I'll definitely not kill a planet. See you later.
Yeah.
Gotta go. So like something is obviously going on with Jean. Meanwhile, Professor X is in Cerebra and starts hearing...
Well, that's where Jean's heading. She's like, I forgot something in Cerebra.
Yeah.
That's what she detected. Like she wants to go check in on this.
And all of a sudden something starts happening to Professor X while he's in Cerebra. A weird voice speaks to him, says hello again, so it's someone that's familiar with him. And it starts kind of taking over his entire body. Like it says, like, you can't form a single thought. It's all garbage in there. And that's another thing I love about Grant Morrison's writing is it feels, man, I hate using the word visceral a lot, but like it's all garbage in there. And like later on, like what does it feel like when someone throws up on your soul? Like it's just very fucking like just vicious, right? Like it's just like it's all garbage in there.
He's got a really concrete way of like making you relate to psychic concepts, which are things that no one has experienced, but he relates them to things that you have experienced or you can imagine. Which what I'm describing is similes, which is writing. The simile and metaphor, and it's such the curve that comics where it's like this is something that is praiseworthy. But it's rarer than it seems.
I listened to a Bonfire Side chat today where Cole invented casting somebody. So it's good that Days of Future Cast is now inventing similes and metaphor.
Yeah. Well, Grant Morrison's inventing it. We're just the explainer for it. So
I think we can take a little bit of credit.
Yeah, which is Gary Butterfield, Jeremy Gray, and Grant Morrison. Gary Butterfield, Jeremy Gray, and Grant Morrison's new X-Men featuring Frank Quitely.
Special guest Chris Claremont.
One of the things I love that he does too is when somebody's having a psychic attack, he portrays it through their dialogue. So like Xavier's trying to fight back, but he barely can. He's like speaking in clipped sentences like who, you, what are you? He can't complete sentences. And this thing is eating his mind and it's fucking up Cerebra. Like pipes are bursting, blood vessels are bursting in Xavier's eyes, his nose is bleeding. and he basically says, like, I'm going to be you and I'm going to make you a murderer. I'm your first, oldest, and last enemy. The terror that you thought would never return. Your big, ugly secret. It's like, shit, what is going on here?
Yeah. How many other secrets does he have that we need to know about?
Yeah.
And then he literally pulls a gun and is able to put some words together. He says, I'm going to say this only once. Get out of my head or I'll fire. And the next panel switches to like what is obviously a completely different character actually speaking out loud, saying like, you would do that, wouldn't you? And like, this is only how this is going to start. Like, now you should be afraid. And I just love the idea that he would have a fucking gun and would like, I am going to kill myself if I have to, if I feel like I'm getting taken over. Like if apocalypse is taking me over, I'm going to shoot myself in the head because that's what I have to do.
A brutal subtweet to Scott Summers, who did not shoot himself in the head when apocalypse took him over. So
did Grant Morrison invent subtweeting?
Like just absolute, like, hey, this is what I would do if somebody took me over. Mm-hmm. But then Cassandra Nova, we'll find out who that is, backs off. And this was just to scare him. Like, she is a terrorist in a literal sense. Like earlier you said, like, oh, she wants to destroy all mutants. She does, but she mostly just wants to torture Charles Xavier. Yeah, but like she wants to destroy all mutants because it's the thing that would hurt him the most.
Yeah, exactly. Jean runs up and pulls Cerebra off of his head. And of course, like, things are sparking around while she's doing that. She says that his thoughts are bleeding and she felt a mind quake, which are all very cool concepts to me into all of this stuff. He warns her, like, hey, don't come into my thoughts any further. Like, you can't handle any of this shit in here. And it basically says, like, whatever it is, it's in Ecuador. Hank was right. Like, he saw something in Cerebra that we didn't see, and Scott and Logan are headed right for it. And he's like laying down, cannot move, blood coming out of his nose, kind of sick.
Mm-hmm. And we cut over to Cassandra Nova. Her nose is bleeding too, from this psychic contact she's made. And Trask here is starting to push back. Like, I'm very uncomfortable. I'm getting eaten alive by insects. You lied to me. What am I doing in a guerrilla war zone? And we find out, this is where she kind of reveals what's going on. She talks about how this Master Mold factory has been making its own Sentinels that are evolving themselves. So again, tying an X-Men enemy into an X-Men principle. They have been kind of taking spare technology, remaking themselves into these kind of like self-made robots that can self-assemble. And she has taken these soldiers who are dead, she'll later reveal, and she's piloting them around with her mind, which the Sentinels then run around destroying around him.
And this all looks extremely violent and scary. Like, Sentinels being kind of the boxy, purple, like, robot-looking dudes, almost out of the 60s, like, kind of thing. But, like, these things already, like, you can only see, like, silhouettes, and they were already very terrifying.
Mm-hmm. They pull guns on him, and she basically says, tell them to stop. Like, they'll respond to your voice. If you don't, they're going to kill you. And he says something, and they have to obey, because, that is hardwired into the idea of Sentinel, that they have to obey Trask. Preserve Trask DNA. And she basically, she teases him a little bit more, but talks about, like, listen, I did not bring you here because you're a dentist. Your future does not lie in dentistry. Your future lies in genocide.
What a hell of a line.
Yeah.
Hell of a line.
Exactly.
Like, it's so ridiculous and so fucking terrifying, right? Like, it's like, what is this person going to do? And like, what does it have anything to do with dentistry? Like, it's a very weird line, and I really like it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very, very spooky. And just also the idea, this guy, this Trask character, where he's not going to stick around for very long, spoiler, but we do he goes through a little arc, which I love, of him being terrified, him getting into it, and then later, before he's disposed of in the next episode, she's like, I know that you secretly fantasize about this. Like, once I've introduced this power to you, you think about keeping mutant slaves and stuff, and it's just really fucked up. Her disdain for humanity is just so palpable. But that's issue 114 of things, and I think it's a great setup. Like, I think this sets everything up, reintroduces the characters, reintroduces the status quo, incredibly intriguing villain.
Yeah.
And it's a new villain, right? Like, Cassandra Nova is a great X-Men villain, and it's not just like, oh, we wheeled out Mr. Sinister.
Yeah. Something I really appreciated, like, picking this up as someone that's new incoming. Like, I didn't have to go through that same old Apocalypse bullshit. I didn't have to go through Mr. Sinister or even Magneto. Like, and I was not being really experienced with the comics, I was like, where the fuck is Magneto? Where is Iceman? Like, where are all of my faves at? But this story is so good, and like the setup is so like really intriguing that I just did not care about the end of the issue. And like, open it up, where's Iceman? Page 22. Who the fuck is Iceman? Right? Like that's where I was with this, and it's just, man, what a great intro to really get you into not only this arc but the entire like fucking series.
What it makes me think of is that like a lot of times when I will watch X-Men media or read X-Men comics, we talk about on the network a lot, like, you know, every people having like their tropes, right? And like X-Men are my tropes. So you put Iceman on a screen, Iceman's doing Iceman shit. That's enough to get me in the door. Right. I just like Iceman.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be a trade-off though. Like there are comics that are not very good that I read just because the X-Men do X-Men shit in them. And there are clearly movies that I watch that I get some enjoyment out of just because X-Men are doing X-Men shit. But this comic kind of proves this can function as both a story and you get X-Men shit.
Yes.
So like when I'm just kind of looking around for traditional X-Men shit, it's all there. It's a little subtle, but it comes in more and more as the series goes on. And it also just functions as a story in a way that is, incredibly strong. Like doing this after the shows is so crazy because like even the cartoons that I really loved of this or the media that I really loved, very, very rarely did it reach to like this kind of height of just this kind of compelling page turning kind of mystery.
And it's notable that like maybe the two times that happened, one was Deadpool 2, one was Logan. Like it wasn't even X movies, right? Like they weren't X-Men, they weren't a team well, I guess Deadpool was, but it was like X-Force kind of situation. But those are the only two movies I think that could really get you to these kind of heights that this particular comic book series really takes you as far as just.
And even that's like more of a comedy.
Yeah.
That's like very good. That's not as like Logan, the movie definitely does this. But then I think also it's kind of rare in comics too. Like there are other X-Men runs I love, like absolutely. Like this is not the be all end all, but there's a reason it's my favorite. And I think it does the best at being both a cool mystery with cool ideas and non-embarrassing dialogue and great designs and also X-Men shit.
Yeah.
So very excited to keep reading it.
Very excited. If you guys like the show, patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv, you know what you get. It's a cool spot. It pays for Gary's life. It pays for my life. It pays for all of our lives. Thank you very much if you already do that. You can also rate and review the podcast. That would actually go a long way since we're kind of relaunching the show. Like, give it a fresh review, give it a fresh rating, like boost us up in the rankings somewhere, like help us out. It would go a long way to spread the show. And if you really like the new format, tell your comic book friends. Maybe they didn't care about us goofing on, the animated series, but maybe they'll care about us goofing on Grant Morrison a little bit. So do all of those things.
And again, your patience is appreciated. We're recording these in batches, so if you have feedback on the format, definitely let us know, but we might not act on it right away. Or at all, just because that's how feedback works. But if we do act on it, it might not be right away because we're recording these in batches.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll be back soon.